Buying a second-hand bike can be a great way to save some money. Auction sites and forums, you can find some bargains, but make sure you don't get stung. This is how to check out a second-hand bike before you buy it. There's a few major components I'll check every time, but actually a really good indicator of how well looked after that bike is just by checking how clean it is when you first show up. That might give you an idea about the sort of person that's had it before and if they look after their bike or not. Hopefully you've worked out the bike size you need before you show up, so the frame is the correct size for you, but there's a few other important things like the steerer tube. If someone slammed their stem right down and then cut the steerer tube off and you like a really high bar, you might have to get a new crown and steerer. It should be really expensive unless you could maybe make the difference up with putting higher rise bars on. So I check that. Obviously I've got a spacer on top and below, so there's plenty of movement around there. I've got a dropper post on this, but if you had a fixed seat post, that person may or may not have cut down that seat post. So look at a few things on the bike that you can change to make sure it'll fit you. Okay, so let's start with probably the most expensive component of the bike, the frame. Mine's carbon fibre, and on those bikes I'd be looking for any damage. So go right around the frame. Under here is a really common place to find stone chips, things like that. Luckily a Scott Genius has got one of these sort of foam protectors underneath there, so that stops anything from damaging the bike, but I would definitely check under there, underneath the bottom bracket where stones flick up. But go around the full frame, front to back, and check there's no damage. On an aluminium or a steel frame, I'll be checking all the welds. I check the one underneath the head tube carefully because bikes can break there, but check all of them. Dents are less important than on a carbon frame, but I would check the bike over. And if you do find any damage, scratches, things like that, you can maybe negotiate on the price, but I wouldn't buy the bike if it was cracked at all. I would also check over the paintwork. And somewhere it's really common to get some damage is on the chainstay where the chain slaps around. So double check there's no serious damage on those. And this will also tell you if that person has protected their bike and if they care about the bike. This bike comes with one of these protectors on the chainstay, so there's no damage under there. But you want to check if someone's maybe made their own one, they're probably going to tell you that they've looked after their bike. On a bike with suspension, I'll start off with the fork. And again, I check the whole thing for any damage. The lowers quite often get scratched, but really the most important part are the stanchions. These have got this expensive Kashima coating on. And just check all the way around for any markings from any scratching, any dents in there. But also that can get worn off if these seals haven't been kept clean, and that can be expensive to repair. So just check around, make sure there aren't any vertical scoring marks on there. Same on the shock, make sure that is really nice and clean and no marks on there. And I would also cycle them over, so push on the fork and on the shock and check there's no play in there. Grab the front brake, give the fork a push, make sure it feels nice and smooth, and also push and pick the front wheel up to check they're not topping out and there's no damage inside those forks. Also with the front brake on, just rock the bike back and forth and feel for any movement in there. You can feel if the headset's loose, but also I'm going to check the bushings in the fork. So if there's any movement in that fork and that sort of flopping around a little bit, that can also be a bit of an expensive fix. Go to the shock, give that a push, make sure it's working as you'd expect, and also pick the back wheel up, check those bushes aren't damaged or worn. They're not the most expensive thing to fix, so it's not the end of the world as long as it's those. If the bearings on the suspension need doing, that can be a bit more expensive. So whilst you're there, have a feel all around the bearings and also just trying to flex that back wheel and have a look down the back of the bike. If that's all moving around, if the linkage is all moving around, that's not a great sign. That probably means the bearings are on the way out. So that is something to factor into the price. Check the wheels, I give them a rock to see if the bearings are on the way out and then pick them up. Just carefully give them a spin and just hold your finger next to them and look for any buckles side to side and also up and down in the rim. If there are any, anything over sort of 3 or 5 mil sort of movement probably isn't going to be fixed that easily. And also that's probably going to show you if there are any dings or dents in that rim. Whilst you're spinning the wheels, just check the brake rotors. They're running nice and straight and true through the caliper. Keep your fingers away from them. You can take them off, but they're nice and straight. Give the brakes a pull. With disc brakes, they want to feel nice and consistent and a light action on there. You can also ask the owner when he last bled the brakes. Again, it's going to give you another indicator of how well looked after that bike is and how competent the previous owner is at looking after it. I would also check the drivetrain. If the chain is worn out, that might mean that the chain cassette and chainring all need replacing in one, and that can be expensive. So if you have one of these chain wear indicators is great. That shows me that my chain is, pretty much worn out now, to be honest, so it's about time I change that. If you don't have one of these, I'll just check by sight, really have a good look at the chain ring, make sure they're not bent over at all or looking like shark fins, but also just actually sort of running the chain through your hands a little bit and bending it side to side can give you a little bit of an indication. If it's really, really floppy, it probably means that chain's worn and it might be time to change the whole thing. Check out the gearing on the bike as well. It's definitely worth checking if it's a one by system like this. I've got a 34 tooth chainring on the front, which is kind of average. Sometimes they go down to about 30, which isn't going to give you a very high gear. So check that out, make sure it suits you before you buy the bike. There are some things that are consumable and you might expect to be slightly worn out, like grips, tyres, and even gear cables. I would definitely check them, but just remember that it's not the end of the world. They probably will need replacing at some point anyway. Just try and factor those things in. Tyres aren't the cheapest things to replace, so that might help you negotiate a price. Next thing I would do is check all the bearings on the bike. So headset, give it a spin, have a feel on the side of that head tube for any grinding or any movement at all front to back. Same with the wheels, give them a spin and have a feel on the fork leg, give them a wobble side to side. Pedals, you don't spin wildly, see there's a bit of grease still in there. They're really nice and smooth. Bottom bracket, give the cranks a wobble side to side, and rear wheel again, give it a wobble. Give it a spin, all nice and smooth on my bike, so I wouldn't be worried about those bearings. The seat post is definitely worth checking, especially if you've got a dropper post. Just cycle that through, make sure it's working, there's not too much wobble in there. If you've got a normal fixed seat post, I would make sure it's not seized inside the frame. That can happen on metal frames, and that can be really hard to try and get loose if you need to try and move that seat post. If possible, it's always great to have a quick ride of the bike. It doesn't have to be on a trail, just give it a quick spin down the road, change to the gears, put a little bit of power down and make sure that chain isn't slipping. It's also a good chance to test those brakes out and make sure they're working. If you've thoroughly checked the bike over, you might have found some bits like the seat might be a little bit tatty or the tyres might need replacing, and just try and do your best to negotiate the price a little bit. If you want to see more videos from GMBN, you can click up there for our 30-minute bike wash. That might be good for those sellers out there and want to make their bike look good. And click just down there for our full maintenance playlist, give you some tips on how to look after that bike. Click in the middle to subscribe to GMBN, it's totally free and we have a cool new video every day. And give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video.